When we think about how research adds to our knowledge, we need to start by identifying the design used for a particular study, since the design represents the type of relationships that can be identified. We can continue working with the research designs as representing two broad categories, experimental and non-experimental, with the difference being whether a variable is manipulated. Authors aren't always as precise as could be, and do sometimes make statements that would seem like they didn't experiment, but when we look at the variables, we realize they didn't manipulate anything or even measure naturally occurring groups for a quasi-experimental design. One of the reasons I included this part of the worksheet is to help us remember that the design will influence the knowledge we can take away from the study. If it isn't an experiment, we can't think about it in terms of cause and effect. Given that, your notes about the variables in a study probably include all of the information you need to determine the design. When we look at our notes for the Burton and King article, we can quickly see that they manipulated the writing variable, so it's an experimental design. If you haven't already done so, please pause this recording to open your files for the Burton and King article and make a note about the design. When we looked at the variables in the Hurst article, we noted that the article format was a little different, and the way the variables were operationalized was a little different. After looking at the variables, we know they didn't manipulate a variable, so that's all we need to know it's a non-experimental study. Looking at our notes about the focus of the article also increases our confidence that we're on the right track. The purpose refers to synthesize and identify trends, which both fit with non-experimental designs. In this case, it can be helpful to note the specific type of non-experimental study. That can help jog our memory later when we're compiling information from our notes. This is an example of a content analysis. Our text talks about content analysis in the chapter about descriptive research, but emphasizes the analysis of popular media. In some cases, though, researchers also analyze other articles. A content analysis is also a type of descriptive study, but making the note about it being a content analysis was more helpful for me when I was trying to remember this study. Now that you've learned about the process and seen my model, use the PDF file of the Hurst article to complete the variable section of that worksheet. Then, look at Schifrin and Nelson. It's a quantitative article, so you can use the strategies we learned about for Burton and King for that worksheet. Burton and King are only measured variables, making the study non-experimental. If we look closer, we can see that they have two main variables, even though they use three measures for one of the variables. There also isn't an indication that they had a variable that was used to create sets of scores. That means it fits the characteristics of a correlational study. Hopefully, working through the other sections of the worksheets combines with your knowledge about the types of designs to make the process of identifying the design fairly straightforward. Right now, we're focused on the two broad categories of designs, but it's helpful to think about the characteristics of the more specific types of non-experimental designs too.